Really looking forward for that session and for our discussion. Now that our real hosts have abandoned us, I know they're somewhere here. I can take over. Great to have you here. Have you been enjoying the event so far? I see some smiling faces. Fantastic. Normally, Kätlyn, I would start with you because, ladies first, but I thought as we are discussing RevOps and revenue operations, we have one case, Mike. I heard before the event that you recently introduced RevOps. And so I think this is where the story always starts, is when you introduce something new. I wanted to start with you, Mike. You introduced RevOps recently at your organization, and when I was hearing about this, I was thinking, I've been in RevOps so long, I don't remember how it was my life before RevOps. So can you give us an intro, like what triggered you? What was the situation where we're like, yeah, enough, we need RevOps?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so I think that the main trigger was just kind of the same as for what a lot of companies are, which they kind of realize that they've got these kind of specialist functions internally that might be kind of aligned with the sales org, or they might be aligned to a speciality, such as a CRM team or an analytics team, and they just decided, what are we doing here? We need to sort of bring these under one roof and try to see the whole. Let's look a bit more holistically. Let's zoom out a bit and think of it more of a kind of the revenue funnel. And I think that's always been challenging. It's always, hi AJ. It's that's always a challenge for me to kind of step in and take over those already existing teams. So the challenge is that you have these kind of experts who are already kind of embedded in the company and they're already doing things their own way. Yeah, my big challenge was to kind of mash them all together and really set out some roles and responsibilities and just lay the groundwork for what is RevOps in the first place. I found that was a huge challenge right at the start, that we thought we wanted it as a company, but really the first challenge was, people think RevOps is another word for sales ops, and they just kind of stare blankly at you when you try and explain what RevOps is, a kind of a full revenue funnel thing. So I think it was really just a deep communication piece. We thought we wanted it, but it was then what do you do to kind of, what do you do to define it and communicate it?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's been a whirlwind. It's been a whirlwind. It's been 6 months for us now, and it's gone by like it was a week ago.
I'll take that 6 months in. You probably don't have hard evidence just yet about the results. I know that Kätlyn has been in this for quite some time. Kätlyn, do you have like hard evidence? Do you have something to show for and go like, yeah, this is a part where we increased revenue through RevOps?
Yes. Well, I've been in it for like 6 years, but in my current company, Klaus, we actually started the program also like 1.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. So we did have like a very small sales team, and then it was just, okay, let's just get on with it. I was brought in to do that. I would say the change has been huge. Like if we even look at the data, well, one part, first of all, we didn't have any data before. That's like one thing, right? So you can now go to the leadership and be like, hey, this is all we have, and this already gives such a boost. But I think like more specific things, as I'm working together with sales and marketing and customer success as well, then optimizing the customer success part has been a huge thing this year. Due to like the environment being as it is, and people kind of like the retention not being as good as it was before. So it's very crucial to optimize that. And we have made quite a few changes there, like from the revenue operations side.
I saw Alon nodding like, yes, absolutely. Alon, do we want to add to this? Like what are you doing to align sales, marketing, customer success?
Sure. So I think that the environment right now is just as Kätlyn is mentioning. It's an environment where you need and you want to make sure that you're providing value, that you don't have many customers that due to efficiency are deciding to churn. And one of the things that are very, very clear is this alignment between CS, sales, marketing, the ability to kind of understand that NDR metrics or churn metrics are not starting and ending in the customer success side. It starts already in the marketing area of things, how you communicate the messaging, how the sales team is actually focusing on those things that are important to the clients, and then how the clients are working with your platform or with your solution, whatever it is. And I think that this is a key change, moving from those, the well known silos into something that is more streamlined.
Yeah, fascinating. Speaking of moving and transitioning and aligning, AJ, thank you for joining from San Francisco. I know it's early for you over there. You are not only a RevOps person, you're also a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. And I happen to know that you spent 9 years in bringing Lean Six Sigma, so process quality improvement, as a consultant to companies, and then transitioned into RevOps. Can you give us a little bit picture what it was like to transition from general process improvement into that specific part, and how you're leveraging this?
Yeah, so for everyone who's on this call, on this live stream, I'm AJ, and as Steven mentioned, I spent a lot of my career growing up in healthcare and healthcare tech, and really understanding how to move the needle in terms of generating more revenue. And so a lot of the projects that I took on really had two different flavors. One was to find savings from and cost efficiency through process improvement. The other version of a project that I used to take on was what we call Design for Six Sigma, where we would enter really a white space area and figure out, what does the process need to look like? What do the systems need to look like? And what does the organization need to look like in order for us to generate new revenue for the company? And so what I ended up doing is, because I was a black belt, it sort of becomes ingrained in you, all of the different tools that you use on a regular basis in order to understand really the state of the business, and then to understand how to move the needle when it comes to improving the business. I don't want to go too deep into Six Sigma nerd land, but simple things like process mapping, for example, understanding the process as it is today, making sure that you understand what the process looks like, and doing a value stream mapping analysis to understand, where is there waste in the process? Where are there steps that we are performing that do not serve the business, and eliminating those steps, because that reduces your cycle time. So Matt, who spoke about the metrics that matter to a CFO, some of the levers that are important when you're looking at customer lifetime value or time to value would be your average sales cycle time. And so eliminating waste in a process is one very easy way for you to shorten your average sales cycle time in order for you to get to revenue faster. A couple of other things that I've really leveraged, and I really enjoyed Darren's talk about data management, because it all really starts with data, is to figure out, one, of all the factors and the inputs that go into a process, which of those inputs really matter in moving the needle. Because you could have 10 inputs that go into a process, and maybe only 2, 3, or 4 of them actually move the needle. The other thing that you should really look at in taking data a step further is, not only do you look at which factors are more important, but which factors are most correlated. So which of the inputs make a difference or impact another input that helps you move the needle. And so when I joined the RevOps team, I typically take a stance of sitting back and observing first and figuring out where the possible issues are. I'll introduce at this point yet another Six Sigma methodology called root cause analysis. You look at a situation, you figure out what the issues are, and you go through a process of identifying what the root causes are for why a situation may not be working or you're not seeing optimal results. And through that root cause identification, you're going through a discovery process, you're measuring certain things, you have to figure out whether those measurements are even accurate. You go through an analysis phase using that data to say, are we measuring the right things and are they being calculated correctly? You then follow through with how do we improve this process? And that's really where figuring out the factors and the inputs that matter most and which ones impact each other the most goes into effect. And then I think last but not least, at least from a consultant perspective, you never want to walk away from a project and not give the business a control plan. And that's really where I think it was Darren who talked about documentation, making sure that you create documents along the way, such as process maps, such as job aids, such as action plans. These are all collateral that you should be turning over to the business in order to make sure that they understand, here's where we started, our baseline, here is where we wanted to go, our benchmark, and here is how we're going to track progress. So that's a long-winded way of answering the question, but really I would say from a black belt perspective, there are so many practical applications of the different Six Sigma lean methodology tools into revenue operations.
AJ, I always love to listening to you because you're exploding from knowledge. There's this one can really tell the master in the black belt from this. You mentioned new revenue, yeah. You mentioned root causes, and you mentioned moving the needle. Dan, you are responsible. You're VP of revenue operations at Ardoq. Can you contribute with examples? How RevOps in your organization moved the needle, how you had examples where you really moved the revenue through revenue operations?
It's a good question, Stephen, and tough follow-up when you're going after AJ, but maybe a nice layup depending on how you look at it. I think when you think about driving things through the funnel, right? Sometimes RevOps is pigeonholed into kind of tech admin. I was talking with a colleague yesterday about building, right? And the building piece is the easiest part. It's actually, to AJ's point, the process is the hardest part, getting right, and how you drive operational discipline to improve the funnel and improve, or the bow tie, depending what you want to talk about, the different metrics throughout. And one of the key things that we've done recently over the past, we've been measuring it for quite some time now, is at Ardoq, we're a horizontal approach go-to-market, so we can sell to almost any vertical. And what we did about 2 years ago is redefined our ICP in a very systematic way. So we get laser focused on what are the parameters that a good customer looks like, and bring that all the way back down to our marketing engine, and then measure that so we can have a predictive score to understand, as we move throughout the funnel, what is the likelihood for them to become a customer and be successful. And we continue to run regressions and understand how that is improving over time as our product evolves and our ACV and sales cycle, and we measure a lot of different metrics. But one of the key parts is that's just what a good customer looks like. But if we think about the sales process itself, is we've grown quite a bit over a short amount of time. And what we've seen is that our sales process was breaking at the top of the funnel because we didn't have any operational rigor. So what we actually had to do is revisit that process and understand each step, and are we following in what are the gaps, right? So we understood what is S0 and S1, and those rejection reasons results and why things are disqualified. And sometimes those nuances are missed when you're running so fast. But to AJ's point, the process itself, if you get that right and the value prop and what you're trying to deliver, that's actually the key to success. So to answer your question, some of the examples that we've done to drive real revenue faster is redefine our ICP in a very systematic and pragmatic way as it moves throughout the funnel, and then ensure that our process is tied to that to not only ensure that our customer experience is good, but also the sales process to deliver value and uncovering the gaps at the top of the funnel to shorten our sales cycle, increase ACV, and ultimately time to close and NRR numbers.
So fascinating. We look now a lot at process, and I like to think of RevOps as process and people. And my next question would be maybe in that order to Mike and Kätlyn. Mike, recently, your organization had recently introduced RevOps into their operations. Kätlyn, you've been in this for a while. I would like to know, both of you, how do you manage people and culture? And I would like AJ. I know that lean is a bottom up. Everybody has to improve processes in the lean philosophy. So I'd like to then transition to you, AJ, and hear how you leverage this bottom up thought. But Mike, let me start with you. What did you encounter when you were introducing this from a people perspective?
I think the biggest challenge is kind of what I said before. It's that introducing RevOps kind of as a concept to a lot of people was quite hard from the start. And I think that, you kind of, the change piece is that you're not just, you're trying to get across to people that you're not just a kind of ticketing team. I think even from a kind of executive level down, they hear RevOps and they think, you kind of deal with everything that they don't want to do, or maybe they can't do because of technical requirements. So, and as you know, RevOps can be, I presume that most of us have RevOps teams where you have multiple people and multiple teams doing very specific jobs. And I don't think people take the time to understand that unless you force them to. So that's been a big issue for me, that people just say, and not necessarily just in this role, but just in RevOps in general, that you get assigned this kind of RevOps will do it mentality. So you have to firstly think about, how do I communicate this to the wider organization? And we made the decision to switch to RevOps, back in December, and I had a kind of 2-week period, and all I didn't plan on what we were going to execute. I didn't necessarily even talk to the people in the team as much as I should. I planned an operating system, and that's the terminology that we use internally. And that's to say, how do we set up the team? What meetings do we have, down to that level? What's the agenda of those meetings? We're internal and with our stakeholders. What's our roles and responsibilities? How are we going to plan our roadmap when we come to it? How are we going to prioritize things like that? So I used that time to kind of set up this operating system, which was all written down. And I noticed a lot of all of the kind of the teams like sales and marketing, they do that too. They have this operating system, but they have that kind of pre-built in kudos already, that people already know who they are, and they get the respect from the other teams already. RevOps don't necessarily have that in organization. So I had to come prepared with this operating system and say, this is what RevOps are. We're not a ticketing team. We should be up there with the rest of the stakeholders. And this is what we do. So any questions people had, I came prepared to answer them from a kind of like change management perspective. And I found that incredibly useful. I think it sped up the integration, by months.
Yeah. Kätlyn, you're longer in that journey. You probably started in a familiar way back then, but now looking back, how has that changed?
It's changed a lot. I think first of all, the company where I started was very different of where I work now. So the understanding of what it actually is, it was created organically. Like for the need, everything was already on fire. So somebody had to deal with the fires, very common. But now I feel like I'm in a position where the understanding of what I do and the the kind of impact of it actually is very understood by the leadership, which also like trickles down, right? So that's one thing. And second thing, what I when I started now in Klaus was boundaries. That basically the same as Mike said, like just the boundaries. This is what I do. This is what I expect for you to do. And I accepted the thought of me writing to people and them being scared at first, like, oh my God, what did I do? Like I just accepted it, like, yeah, it's fine. Let them be fearful. That's good. And now we've gotten to a place where it's very, everybody understands what they need to do, why they need to do that, and just the giving them the input of like, I am not asking you for these things just because I woke up and I'm like, I need this today, and we're doing this because we need the company to grow fast, and this is what you need to do because of that. And also the communication coming from like the whole team focusing on the same thing, like growth. This is all we need at the moment. And so I think this really helped, and so it's a nice balance at the moment. Very privileged.
Yeah, that sounds very familiar. When I was a CRO, I would bring my framework and my understanding and try to tell people what to do, only to end up with my team telling me what I need to do. And I would like to AJ, to ask you. I know we spoke about this on another occasion. I know, and I'm not no expert whatsoever in that, but I know that the lean philosophy has a lot of exercises and team tools to build a culture where the team actually tells the higher hierarchy what to do and what to expect, and to improve the process like from bottom up. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and I kind of want to set the stage for where this question started, which is, how to explain RevOps to people and make sure that everyone is aligned. I think for me, when I start a new role and I'm entering a new company, the first thing that I do is to build a deck that explains what RevOps responsibility is. And from my perspective, that responsibility is to design and implement strategy, to design to run the business, and to use relevant data to lead to action or solutions, right? And you can really think about things and 3 pillars that RevOps is responsible for. The first one being creation, which is to drive the creation of a go-to-market strategy that optimizes the pipeline, the productivity, and increases your conversion and win rates. The second pillar that you're really responsible for is optimization. Dan talked about optimizing the ICP, right? So under this pillar, you're really responsible for refining account, territory, segmentation, target, and conversion. And then the last pillar that you're really responsible for is the measurement. So you need to develop and establish a go-to-market scorecard that aligns all of the revenue teams and solves the problem instead of competing. And I say all of this for a specific reason. From my perspective, strategy and tactics are equally important. So strategy sets the direction and the vision for your business, while tactics are the specific actions that you take to achieve your goals. Without a great strategy, proper execution is useless, and great execution without a clear strategy will not lead to success. And so when you talk about what are some of the frameworks that you can use in order to get alignment, there is a framework that I use called the alignment framework. It's a little bit of a riff on the DMAIC process of Lean Six Sigma, where I've renamed some of the things to make it more simplistic for business users to understand. Instead of saying discovery, for example, I use the word provocation, where you want to ask the questions, what is keeping you up at night? And then you go through the discovery phase the same way that you normally would, exploring all of the different inputs and factors and criteria for success. Then you go through a diagnostic phase, which really is your analyze phase in DMAIC. And you think about what are the things that are negatively impacting our business? What are the things that are obstacles? And what are the things that are accelerators? And you can kind of just walk through this process and go all the way down to recommendation and say, based on everything that we know and everything that we've talked about, what are some recommendations that we can come up with collectively as a group using a Six Sigma exercise called brainstorming? You get all of the main stakeholders in a room. You talk about these things. Usually I use a 2x2 matrix to understand the different priorities and to figure out themes. And at the end, you come out with recommendations. Now, coming out with recommendations, I think, is not enough. I think it's important to take it to the next step, which is to create an action plan. And the specific tool that I use for that is a tool called the OGSM. And what that is a document that outlines what are the corporate level objectives that we are all striving to achieve. What are then the individual goals of the go-to-market team that would lead us to reach those objectives? What are the strategies that we are going to deploy in order to achieve those goals? And then what are the metrics that we're going to track in order to measure our progress to achieving those goals? Further simplified, if you want to think about it this way, objectives are really the what in words. What are we trying to do? What is the end state that we're trying to get to? Goals are the what in numbers. They have to contain numbers. We want to increase bookings by 50%, 100%, or whatever the case might be. Strategies are the how in words. How are we going to get to those goals? And you spell it all out. And then the metrics are really just, you know, the data management and tracking progress in numbers. And so I think it's important to think of frameworks in this way of, one, setting the foundation of what it is that you're trying to get to and using an alignment framework to get there. And then two, it would be laying out an action plan, whether you use an OGSM or something else, to figure out how to get to that end state. And for me, what I've found really helpful is to create a deck when I start any new role, walking everyone through the various steps that I plan on taking on. I have a very specific facilitation style that I use that's very much Six Sigma, and I explain to them what the facilitation method is going to be, so that when we come together, everyone has the right expectation of what the exercise is and what our desired outcomes are.
Can you describe an exercise?
Yeah, so one of the things that I love to do is when I get together with the team, first things that I ask is, you know, in this session that we are spending together, what is our agenda and what are the goals that we want to achieve? And usually people will.
I'm trying to get a picture here. So who is in that session?
So in the past, I've, for example, facilitated a session around corporate strategy for a company where the CFO is present, the CRO is present, the CMO is present. Definitely led go-to-market facilitation sessions where the CMO, his direct reports, the CRO, the regional VPs, and myself, a global VP of RevOps, are present. And really what we're trying to figure out is it usually anchors on an objective. There is an objective that we need to grow the business at all costs. I'll give an example. And the goal then is to grow bookings by 100%. So the first thing that I'll ask people is really to talk to me about what are the things that are obstacles that you can see right now from us achieving our goals. Also then write down in sticky notes. I don't know if anyone has used this methodology before, but I love using sticky notes. And what I do is I pass out sticky notes and Sharpies to everyone who's participating. And the rule of the exercise is 1 sticky note, 1 thought. You cannot jot down many thoughts on 1 sticky note because we want to be able to group all of those sticky notes into themes. So I have them walk through an exercise of what do we think our obstacles are? What do we think our accelerators are? They put them on the board. Then we spend time together as a team and we create themes for what the obstacles are. So one obstacle may be poor enablement, right? Someone says, you know, our enablement training doesn't happen on a regular cadence, or our enablement.
Let me ask the whole crew here. Hands up, who's using team exercises to come up with root causes and obstacles? Has anyone done this? Kätlyn, want to give us a picture? Are you doing similar things?
We actually, yes, I've done it before with the whole team, like with the sales and marketing teams. Very similar approach of sticky notes, but we now do it with what are we not doing at the moment, or like what could be wrong so that we don't get to our goal. So we don't think about like negative or positive per se, but more so like, okay, so let's say we need to grow, let's say 3 times this year. We didn't grow. Why didn't we? And then everybody writes down their ideas of like, why didn't we get there? So they kind of think about what we could be lacking at the moment, or like what should we be doing, right? So yes, a very similar approach. It works really well.
If this is, maybe I'd like to, I sort of cut you off, AJ. I'll apologize. Maybe if you can round that up in 30 seconds, I'd like to transition to the question if bringing in the team is a new trend. You spoke of strategy, and kind of want to know what each of you is thinking of the future of RevOps and the current trends. But first, AJ, if you could round up those exercise descriptions. We are in the room with all the stakeholders. Everybody has sticky notes. Paint that picture.
So what I asked them to do is to essentially pick top 5 from the sticky notes. Which ones are the most important? Now, tear up the rest of them because they're really not as important as the top 5 that you choose. So it narrows down the focus of what it is that we're trying to get to. And that's when we then figure out what the themes are. And then collectively as a group, we figure out what the priorities are. We usually plot it on a matrix in terms of time to resolution and impact. So you always have to think about the things that you want to solve for and figure out how easy is it to solve for this problem and how much of an impact would it be. Then what I end up doing is I end up distilling it into a spreadsheet or some other document that people can take away and review. And then I set a follow-up session for us to come back together. But really the whole goal here is with this particular exercise and the discussion that comes with it, we should all walk away from the room with alignment as to what the strategy is, what the guiding policy is for us to achieve that strategy, and then what the action plan is.
It makes me think of principles of design thinking, you know, diverging and creating a lot of different ideas and then converging and focusing back on one idea. I wonder if bringing concept like Lean Six Sigma, design thinking into RevOps is a trend. Alon, what is an upcoming trend in RevOps for you?
So I think that there are two main things that we're seeing recently. At least one of them 12 months, the other is a bit newer. Efficiency is a huge thing. I think that it's a huge trend that we're seeing across the board and is affecting all the different areas of the business. It's a good trend, obviously, for revenue operations, as the essence of revenue operations is making sure that reaching the goals, reaching revenue at scale is as efficient as possible. But I think that now there is more executive focus on that. So we're seeing more and more, CFOs, CEOs trying to understand, okay, it's not only about scale and growth, it's also about ROI, which is like shocking, yeah? So suddenly we're all talking about that. And I think that this trend is here to stay, at least for the foreseeable future, and companies are going in this direction. And the other one that I'm shocked we didn't talk about for almost an hour that we're here is AI.
Yeah, I was thinking we made it to 35 minutes and nobody said AI.
So first of all, I want to apologize for mentioning it, but I think that AI is here. It's clear that many processes are going in this direction. Many companies are trying to kind of wrap their heads around how are we going to incorporate it into our processes. And I think that revenue operations is going to have a lot to do with that, because essentially a lot of the activities that are being done today or were done in the past by revenue operations, many of them, even if they are semi-automated, still a lot of kind of manual labor is related to them, and it's wasting a lot of time. And I think that AI will save a lot of that. And we're trying to incorporate a lot of time savings activities using AI within revenue operations on our company. And I think that will help kind of elevate revenue operations from sometimes an operational or tactical function to a more strategic place.
I agree and I disagree. As somebody who spent the better part of the last decade selling AI, I sometimes feel like we all think that this is the secret sauce that's gonna save us. But the truth is, me and you all, we don't have enough data for AI. We like to forget, like we go like OpenAI was the fastest success ever. No, they took 7 years in training their AI. You need vast amounts of data for AI to have impact. But debate me. Dan, Mike, I'd like to hear from you guys. Are you seeing AI as a impact factor for RevOps, or do we just keep?
Yeah, I'll argue you. I'll have a good virtual fight. I think there's I'll mention AI, but I also think there's another theme or trend that we need to tackle as well. Not as sexy as AI. So let me take AI as at the forefront. I think what I'm seeing is there's a lot of executive presence into this AI buzz, both internally and externally. How can we grapple with the change of AI and be at the forefront of it? And if you think about from a technology standpoint, there are a lot of companies, maybe commercial tech, talking about AI, but it is more marketing than it is actual throughput. And if you think about, not to do a plug here, if you think about Apple's keynote speech recently, they didn't mention AI once, but there is a lot behind the scenes that they're working on. And I think from a RevOps standpoint, to Alon's point, it's our job to ensure that our executive team and commercial reps and other leaders in the organization understand what the impact is. Just because they say it, what is that actually going to deliver for our business? Or is that just some marketing fluff and a good blog or two, and now we have it and we're just part of the cog in the wheel? I think to your point, it's still very early days, and we will see some trends over time that yield to more efficiency. But if you don't mind, Stephen, I'm going to segue just one tiny point into the other key piece that I'm seeing. And it was to Mike's point when we first started this conversation about how standing up RevOps. And I really think this is important because different executive leaders look at it on your team structure and your go-to-market model. Are you functionally aligned or are you departmentally aligned? And I also think and what I mean by that is the RevOps matrix really like, here is your sales operations or RevOps focus towards sales, here's your RevOps focus to marketing, or is it functionally aligned where it's talking about operations, it's talking about insights, talking about data, right? In a more holistic approach. And I think we're going to see a maturity towards a hybrid motion rather than just one or the other. And the reason why I say that is, well, we're grappling internally with that, where it's an ownership, who can I speak to make sure this gets through, rather than how can we ensure overall discipline into the entire funnel. So I don't mean to segue it, but I do think AI early days, and one of the big trends we're going to see is a hybrid motion towards both departmental and functional alignment as RevOps matures.
Follow-up questions. Are you toying around with the idea of changing team structures, keyword maybe revenue pods, bringing sales and customer success people into one team and things like this?
I feel like you've been listening to conversations internally. We actually have
only one having those conversations.
I know, most likely. We have been testing it out from a pre-sale side, and also exploring the opportunity of what does it look actually post-sales, as well as we have a partner motion too. So incorporating both the marketing from a demand gen, sales, partner, solution specialist, kind of sales engineer, and a post-sales kind of that account management as a pod, as a hub to work in a unified motion towards territory and accounts rather than these silos. It's something we have started testing, and it's still too early to say one way or the other, but it is very insightful or very interesting to see what the throughput could be with that joint motion.
Make sure you bring enough sticky notes for them to work that out.
I'll have to speak with AJ on that one.
Mike, is that something that you're envisioning? I mean, you just started out. That's probably very early in changing team structures and mixing departments, and you probably haven't yet earned that internally. But give us a picture of your thoughts.
Yeah, I also think that AI is a bit overblown, and the tool I just typed the question into agrees. But no, I think that we'll see a big rise in trends on AI consultancy. I think that's going to be the big thing. I think the problem right now is companies just say we need more of it, and they don't really know what to do. You know, they'll send someone off to a conference.
Surprising that AI can't do that.
Well, yeah, true. Yeah. You don't need someone to answer those questions. But I think just, you know, there's a rise I've noticed even on LinkedIn. There's a rise of people trying to be those thought leaders on how to use, you know, what is it? Because I don't think people know what the right questions to ask are. So I imagine there's going to be a very lucrative consultancy arm in AI. But I think just as a general trend that is probably already happening, but I think we'll see it more and more. I mean, you already see a lot of already established companies trying to break down their silos and unpick their existing processes to turn into a more sort of like a flat structure and adding RevOps. And I imagine that every new company in the next few years, you won't get very many companies who start up without implementing RevOps. So I think that we're going to see that. We're not going to see, you know, brand new startups recruiting someone in sales operations. I think we'll always see RevOps. And I think what that's going to do is the confusion that I talked about before and having, you know, that sort of buy-in thing is going to be done right from the start. So I think RevOps is definitely rising. I think conversations like this and you know, in conferences like this definitely help that. So yeah, my prediction is just, I guess, less confusion. Write it down. That's my prediction.
You mentioned consultancies. I was recently asked from as a CEO and founder about introducing RevOps in their organization, and it was one-on-one conversation. And he asked me what his expectation should be about the impact in numbers. Is it like, does it improve me by 10%, 20%, 30%? What should I expect? And I didn't have an answer. I still don't. Maybe I get one from you guys. But I thought common wisdom is that you can optimize. Common consultant wisdom is that you can optimize every process by 20%. And my second thought was, this is not true. If you go to McDonald's and look how they make cheeseburgers, this is a process that has been optimized over 80 years. You can probably not optimize this by 20%. At the same time, we are all not McDonald's. We just figured out how to make a burger that somebody wants to eat, that we can somehow sell and feed our families. We probably, in our spaces, Series B, Series C, Series D, we had probably a lot of impact. So I want to throw like everybody 30 seconds, really 30 seconds, we're running out of time. What do you think is the margin that we can improve our efficiency and the bottom line with RevOps? AJ, you as a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt, what can we expect?
First, I would say 20% is probably too aggressive. I would say coming into an organization, getting to a 10% improvement is probably a best-in-class improvement. What I would look for instead of an overall improvement percentage would be incremental improvements along the process, because those incremental improvements along the process, even at 2%, can add up to a significant dollar amount. So short answer, I would say if you get to a 10% improvement in some metric or the process overall, that is amazing, but incremental improvements, even just 2% across the process, it would be optimal for me.
Improvement is the new thing that you now do.
Yeah.
Kätlyn, looking back at your experience, what were the bottom lines in your cases?
Well, being a numbers person and also not a liar, so I don't want to lie. I do not have this data, so I would really want to say there's a specific percentage for us that I can see. Okay, that's the impact. But where we are in our growth, we have such like intertwined processes and the communication and all of that, so it's very hard to say. So I will just trust AJ and and keep it at that.
That's AJ. We are almost over time. Dan, Alon, real quick, what is your experience? What is the impact on the bottom line for RevOps? Dan.
You're too kind, so I was going to offer it to the other gentleman left. I think in terms of percentage, very hard to measure, similar to Kätlyn, but in terms of operational rigor and efficiency, so we can actually trust the data to make informed decisions, is the bottom line. Being able to trust that to actually improve our go-to-market and strategy is the biggest play that we have. Not a specific number. And to AJ's point, it's all about the 1 or 2 percentage increases throughout the stages that are driving that. But too early to tell from our standpoint, to be quite honest.
And maybe to throw back to an earlier topic, the culture change and having everyone aligned and looking at the bottom line might be something. Alon, you get the final word. What is your point of view on this?
I also agree with Dan and Kätlyn. We essentially, we're seeing a lot of, to AJ's point, we're seeing a lot of incremental improvements. Those incremental improvements can be even 0.5% and impact a lot, while in other places we can see 30% difference, while it doesn't really help the overall process. So I think it's a risky path to take to tie it only to percentages. It's more about doing making sure that the process is being handled in the right way, in a healthy way.
I see our hosts are showing up. Security is showing up. Everybody out. Everybody out.
No, not like the last week of Saturday.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you all. That was a fantastic discussion. I really enjoyed it a lot. I hope our audience enjoyed it as well. Ivan, please take over from.
Thanks a lot. It was really an interesting, dynamic discussion, and you mentioned a couple of times consultancy, and I just wanted to jump in to the conversation. exactly the last question, I would love also to address it from our perspective, but just a very funny story, because last week we were at Saster, and the second day we were enjoying some talks around 6 p.m. or something like that, and then right away some security guys are coming all over and say, okay, everybody needs to get out, we are already off, so the event is over, so please go. It was really interesting how they, one at a time, they just shut the doors and say bye. We're not going to do that, so everyone who is still joining and still with us, bears with us some time. But especially on the effect of revenue operations, I think because RevBrains is a consulting business, and actually this is something that fascinates us, is the dance, the partnership between the client and the people that are trying to help. So if we think of RevOps as the universal solution, there is always a specific recipe that you need to prescribe to the given business, and it's not always about percentage. It's and some of the lecturers in the previous sections, they already mentioned it. It's about the mindset change. So I think when we speak about applying revenue operations as a philosophy within the company, of course, we need to have in mind the stages. We need to have in mind the current state of the company, and something very important, we need to have in mind the profile and the skills of the people that are going to undergo, but also to drive this transformation internally. And this is just a transformational project. It's not something different than the other projects like digital transformation or something else, but it's very essence. It's actually to see at the end of this, it's actually, there is no end, but to see at some stage of this project, to see actually people feeling more comfortable on how they work together and how are they actually making clients more happy through trusting data, through having aligned processes, to working with technologies that they enjoy working with, and not like having the pain in the ass all the day to fill out some information manually. So I think when we speak about the outcome, it's just very dependent on the given case. We have, for example, the great opportunity to work with Mike here, and I think from the perspective of the leaders, we need to have people like Mike that have those visionary, look in the future and know what they need to do and how to do it, so that we can partner with them on the very most efficient way. So really, thanks a million that you're joining us, and I was sure that Steven is going to provoke you. And something very last, yes, AI consultancy, Mike, really nice put. RevBrains in thinking in that direction too. So combining AI power with revenue operations consultancy, I think is something that we are going to think how to introduce in the year to come, something like that. It was an honor. Wish you all the best. We are going to say some final words with George here, and then we're off also to our families and friends, and for maybe a beer or so. There is no after party, but I really hope that you enjoy this session and you can have a glass of beer or wine or coffee. It depends on the time zone.
Thanks for having us. It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks for everybody who participated here. It was a great discussion. I enjoyed it a lot.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye now.
Oh, well. You're still here, right, Steven?
I'm still here.
Yeah, you're still here, but no, just stay for a minute. Really, thank you for being part of this, and I really hope that you're going to be part of the next session in September as well. We are looking forward in September to see something very hands-on from you and from Jaxx. So that's my invitation to you, and yeah.
Thanks so much. I'd love every time you invite me, I'll be there.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, George.
Great. I think it's more than 10 hours of RevOps knowledge right now. Maybe some time to end this live stream and start reflecting on what we've learned already. I think more than 25 people that joined us on stage during those 2 days, around 600 registrants, and
Yeah.
a lot of insights. So I think it would be a success if everybody who has watched us can implement at least one thing that has learned during those 2 days, because ultimately that's the way revenue operations people can prove the value that really RevOps has. And this is how RevOps will earn strategic place at the table more and more and improve their value.
Yes, and I think we learned a lot. We have also our takeaways in terms of what we're going to deliver in September, not only in terms of topics, but also in terms of user experience. As we already mentioned, there were going to be some live sessions with workshops, so really stuff that actually is going to dive deep into specific problems. Yes, follow us on LinkedIn, find us at RevBrains, or just like visit our page, connect with us on LinkedIn as well. Thanks so much for being with us those 2 days. Really enjoyed it. It was a pleasure. It was an honor, and really pumped up for the next edition of the RevOps Mastery.
And last, stay tuned. We are soon announcing some very interesting formats at RevBrains and very interesting initiatives during the summer. Yes. So, yeah, happy to share with the audience today later.
Have a great evening, everyone. Bye.
Have a great evening. Bye-bye.